Thank you for being America's #1 transformational leadership coach and my partner in creating this conversation. This conversation is a conversation we've had before, but given the holidays are coming and given what's happening in the world, we thought putting a new twist on this conversation would be just the thing to do preceding the holidays. Now, Giovanni and I state that there is something that you and I and the rest of all the human beings are addicted to that actually causes suffering. And we're proposing a way to eliminate that this morning. So what is it you're addicted to that causes suffering and how to eliminate it? Now, Giovanni, there's a lot that could point to that. You and I were thinking and talking about a few examples of the suffering and the addiction. Would you enlighten us, please?
Yeah, sure. But I want to create some context, right? First,
Yeah,
we
that's
get
exactly
into the conversation. And this is the kind of conversation that we really want to practice. We really want to exercise the practices of daily huddle. Like be here, you're right where you're supposed to be, and allow yourself to be in the conversation, right? And we're going to take away significant from the conversation, but we want to bring some perspective, right? And you've got to try this on, right? Not like the truth or anything, but you got to try this on. Raise your hand, your virtual hand or your real hand, right? If you remember the controversy and all the noise and all the chaos around Gore and President Bush when the elections were up for grabs. And somebody had a really strong opinion about it, and somebody had a different opinion on the different spectrums of the conversation. You guys remember that conversation? Yeah, it was real, right? It was really real. And now here's what you got to try on, right? This is where you're like, okay, let me try this on. Do you remember how little difference that conversation made to the quality of your life? Do you remember that? Like when you went home, really your bills had nothing to do with it. The quality of your relationship with your significant other had nothing to do with it. The quality of your relationship with your family or your children, or how your business, your customer life cycle, and how you were giving customer service and everything that actually impacts your life, that conversation made no difference at all. None to the quality of your life. Can you see that? Yeah. But as a society, we love to wrap ourselves up on gossip. So it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'll give you another one. I'm going to give you another example just to make the point, right? Do you guys remember that conversation, a little controversy and a little gossipy around Clinton and Monica Lewinsky? You guys remember that conversation? And people had an opinion about it, and it was everywhere, the whole world. I mean, it was a fun conversation, and some people had strong opinions on whether he should be impeached or not, and morality. You remember all of that? Raise your hand if you remember that. Yeah. Do you remember how little that made a difference to your life? The opinion you had about that made no difference to whether you make money, to whether you love your children, to whether you got a girlfriend, to whether you got divorced. Just no difference at all, right? Make sense? So the conversation we're going to have right now is the kind of conversation that actually makes a difference in your life. Like in what you deal with, actually. It's not something out there that is nice to wrap ourselves around it. Actually, the one that makes a real difference in your life, if you allow it to map it to your life. So it's going to take a little bit. Very good. So I think we're ready for maybe creating the definitions for the conversation.
Yeah, let's do that. And what Giovanni is pointing to is this, right? Even though it made no difference whatsoever to be all sucked into that conversation and to have a real sticky opinion about it, guess what? We all did it. So it's pointing to that I am, you are, Giovanni is, Rose is addicted to something that actually makes no difference and causes suffering. Yet we keep doing it. So
say that
we're
again. Say that again.
proposing
That is so great. Say it again.
well, we are addicted to something that causes suffering, and we keep doing it. That's the nature of addiction. So what is the something we're addicted to? Drum roll, you've heard it before. We are asserting that you and I and every human being is addicted to being right. Your opinion about Monica Lewinsky was the right one. Your opinion about who won the election, whether it was Gore or Bush, was the right one. And man, if you had a friend who had a different opinion, guess what happened to that friend? Probably was no longer your friend, or maybe was on the S list for at least a little bit. So let's take a look at what it is. You know, we'll just at a very high level define the words in the question. What is it you're addicted to that causes suffering, and how to eliminate it? So addiction is to actually be mentally or physically dependent on something and to be unable to stop doing it or using it. Joe, that sounds funny. I'm addicted. I'm mentally and physically dependent on being right. And when I am right and I keep being right, there's some juice I get out of it, but yet there is an amount of pain and anxiety that we call suffering that actually my addiction to being right causes for me. So now I want to playfully define being right for you. RIGHT. To be right is to have righteous indignation gone hostile towards self and others. When I'm right and I'm addicted to being right, I take a jolt, or, you know, it's like putting a needle in my arm and injecting a little bit of righteousness. Wrap it up my indignation. And my indignation is really my sense of how annoyed and disgusted I am with you, that you don't have the same view or the same opinion I have. So you consider, not the truth, you are addicted to having righteous indignation, gone hostile toward yourself and others. And that causes suffering in your life. So wherever there is suffering in your life, whether slight or big, consider that you have righteous indignation gone hostile toward yourself and others. And we're going to look at a few examples now, and then we're going to suggest a way to eliminate it. So put it in the chat. Take a look at some of the areas where you have righteous indignation, whether it's politics, whether it's your relationships, whether it's with yourself. And as you're doing that, Giovanni and I are going to explore a few fun examples with you where we have righteous indignation gone hostile towards self and significant others. Gio, you want to start with yours?
Yeah, sure. So that was so great, Saurel, by the way. That was a great way to open the opportunity to look, right? And so I want to start with an example of history a little bit, and then I'll give my personal example. right? And I know that some of you may know this story a little bit, and some of you don't know anything about it. Maybe it's going to be the first time you hear it. And this is on how scientifically in the 1800s, around 1846, 1845, we as a human race with the scientific community discover how critical it is to wash the utensils, you know, like the the tools that we use for labor. So around 1946, there was a doctor called Ignaz, what's his name, Semmelweis, and he was just becoming, you know, an attending, and he was doing his own scientific research around why there were so many children and women dying out of labor. And there's this disease that was not so common anymore called this childbed fever. And he couldn't understand why, when the doctors were doing the procedure, more children died and women died than when the midwives did the procedure, right? And he couldn't understand that. And so he started looking for different reasons, and he even had the priest go over to the bed in a different direction, and until he discovered, to make the story short, that it was because the doctors were doing biopsies of dead cadavers before they went into labor and do the procedure. So the utensils, the tools that they were using were actually contaminated, and the midwives were not. So he discovered that you had to wash them, right? You had to disinfect them. But here's the thing, here's the point of the story, right? When he discovered that, he became righteous about it. He wasn't just right, he became righteous. So he went out in public to the community and said something like, the doctors are killing the children and the women. And the scientific community was like, wait, hold on. We don't like what you're saying. In fact, we think you're a little crazy. And so for about 12 years, or maybe more, the scientific community did not adopt the practices that the Dr. Ignaz was asking, because he was righteous and he was attacking people in his own righteousness. And thousands of people, thousands of children, right? Hundreds of thousands of children and women died in the process, because you could see that if Ignaz had a little bit of this conversation, he will begin to walk away from being righteous and understand that being right doesn't make the difference he's out to cause. Being right is just part of the equation, right? Okay, so that's a little bit of history, right? Did that make sense? Yeah, that was kind of cool, right? So now in my life, my personal life, so I have a woman in my life that I absolutely adore, right? But I am right about something, and then I become righteous. And that is that she wants to control me. She wants to dominate me, and she wants to control me. And I am not just right, I am righteous. So sometimes when she says, hey, Giovanni, can you do me a favor? I go, really? A favor? Are you going to control the whole entire day? You're going to tell me how my weekend is going to look and maybe the rest of the month? And then I start distancing myself, and then I start like going into this place where she says, well, where are you? Are you going to go there again? See, now you're telling me. And then it goes. And then at that moment, when I become righteous about anything, about that view, then I no longer have a relationship, right? And I get addicted to it, right? So that was my personal example, Saurel. Thank you for listening.
Mine's equally funny. Now, if you're tracking Gio, right, you can see that Dr. Ignaz had righteous indignation, gone hostile toward the medical community. And that made no difference. It actually caused real suffering. Thousands of people died. And in Gio's personal example, and now mine, right? So here's mine. I am right. And that happened a long time ago. Susan and I were living in Birmingham, Alabama. And back then, many of you may not remember that before Google Maps, we had atlases, big old book full of maps that you'd leaf through to find your way and get directions, right? So Susan was sitting in the right passenger seat, and she had the atlas open, and she was navigating, and we ended up going around a parking lot 3 times. And in that moment, I made up that Susan has no sense of direction whatsoever, and she could never tell me where to go when we're driving. So this is how it shows up. And just recently too, we're driving down the road and we're heading to Lenox Mall. Now I have in my head the perfect route to go to another mall, but I didn't realize that. So I'm going down the road and Susan goes, Saurel, turn left. And immediately the addiction was there. Bam! I got myself a shot of righteous indignation. I was automatically annoyed, knowing that, you know, she's got no sense of direction. How dare she tell me to go right when I want to go left? So being as addicted as I am and as righteous and indignant as I was in that moment, I turned left. Well, guess what happened? Half an hour later, maybe, I don't know how long it was, but it took way longer than her way. I did end up in the mall I was going to, Phipps Plaza, which was the wrong mall. And now the minor suffering is the extra time it took. The other piece of the suffering is where there is indignation, like that quality of me being annoyed because Susan is telling me to go right when I want to go left. And I'm already righteous about the fact that she has no sense of direction, causes a rift in our relationship. Like in that moment where I'm being righteous, where I have righteous indignation, there's no love. There is pain and suffering, however slight, however big. Now, thank God, being in this conversation gave us the opportunity to laugh about it last week. We laughed. So one of the ways to look at this is that while we are addicted, we're not doomed to staying that way. Now that's just my example. So now I'm inviting you to chat away. Tell us, where do you see yourself having righteous indignation, gone hostile toward yourself or others? Gio, I know you've got a couple of more examples.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that we want to get your view on this, we want to get your inquiry, your playfulness around it, right? We want to see that we are so right about so many things in our life that is causing suffering, right? And so one place to look is, where do I have suffering in my life? Look, where do you have suffering in your life? Wherever you have suffering, you're right about something. You're right. And then the little needle of righteousness comes in right after it. So look, you gotta look, right? Like for some of us, right? We are right that you don't matter. Like, I don't matter. My opinion doesn't matter. Some people are right about that. Or some people are right about, I'm not really that good looking to date somebody. You're righteous about it, right? Or, I'm just too old to try something new. You're righteous about it, right? Right? Or if you're with a significant other, I don't know if you're one, but just to try this on, I don't think my partner loves me enough. And you're righteous about it, and then you can see all the suffering around it, right? So go ahead and type in the chat, where do you have suffering and where can you bring some playfulness? Where can you see this? I know this is difficult, right? But you got to try. Where can you see that your suffering comes from just being righteous about it, from being right?
And there's nothing wrong with not acknowledging or admitting any of that, because that is the nature of addiction. You know, when you walk up to someone who's addicted and you go, "Are you addicted?" They go, "Oh, hell no, I'm not." That's an indication of the addiction. So now on to the question as you're typing, how do you eliminate it? Well, it's quite simple and not easy to do, yet simple. One, acknowledge that you are addicted to being right. Two, notice when you're being right. Just catch yourself and you'll feel it. You know, mine comes with a tightness in the chest and thus I, I tame it down, but I want to turn around and just snap and say, you don't know where you're going. How could you tell me where to go? Right. So catch it, acknowledge it, notice it, and then create something new. Be right about something else. Yes, Cheryl Girl.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I think I suffer with the issue of time. What if I am being righteous about people being on time and calculating time correctly, and I'm correct? Do I still have to tamp it down when I know that I'm right? Because I'm just saying, 60 minutes is 60 minutes, no matter how you do it. Top of the hour, 10 o'clock is 10 o'clock, and I am right. Do I still have to calm myself down and not be addicted to my righteousness? Am I sounding righteous right now?
See, there's a big difference between being correct, as in the accuracy of your watch, and your astute observation that one needle is on one number and the other needle is another and on another number, right? That is being correct. So like you could look at your watch and say, what time is it? And Gio pointed earlier to be in this conversation, you really have to practice being in the daily huddle. So when you look at your watch and it's 60 minutes later and so-and-so's not here yet, you actually have a choice. You could see that, oh my God, I'm now having righteous indignation toward myself or toward them for quote unquote being late. Yeah. But really, if you're standing right here, right now, what time is it, Cheryl Girl?
It's the right time.
It's now.
It's right now.
It's just right now.
Just right
so now. In eliminating the addiction and the suffering associated with having righteous indignation, gone hostile. You can see the hostility, right? Toward others. When you presence yourself by acknowledging that you have that and saying, oh, it's right now. We're not saying you don't hold others accountable. We're saying you can actually eliminate the suffering associated with having righteous indignation. You could actually say someone's late and not have righteous indignation. The two are not one and the same.
Okay. So I just
that was a great example, Sugar, by the way. And that was generous and that showed the whole world around it. That was so great. I really, really loved it. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have a thought, a comment, what you're discovering in this conversation? What do you see for yourself where you're suffering? And here's why it's important as you are preparing yourself to share, raise your hand. Because the holidays are coming up, right? The holidays are going to be coming up. And you're going to have your family or you're going to have your Zoom calls. And you will know when you are correct, like Share Girl, or when you're being righteous. And you can see all the suffering happening, holding on to that, right? Rather than maybe being creative and taking on something new, right? There's nothing that holds you from creating something new, but the addiction of being right. Okay, I think Jacqueline, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think Saurel saw it. There's some things in the chat. So Dean and Lori K have things in the chat for us.
Dean says, I am righteous about people not wanting to do the work when it comes to taking care of their health. That is cool, right? Kind of like that whole conversation about Monica Lewinsky. You dive into your opinion and it makes no difference whatsoever. So yeah, and in that world, Dean, how much of a difference do you get to make to people's well-being?
Zero. And you know, since I'm a holistic nutritionist, that doesn't give me a way to generate the money I'm committed to creating as an entrepreneur and a business owner. So I'm giving all of that up, and I'm just dancing in the conversation without any significance, and just being with the what is so, and being my commitment. So I'm letting that go.
Awesome. There's another comment from Lori K, but we'll have Rose say something. Rose, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. So, you know, the thing that just occurred to me was that when I'm being righteous, and I have a lot of those moments, when I'm being righteous, it's consuming me. And so that's what's in my space, not being present to, or listening, not being creative. It's the thing that's, you know what I mean? It's filling my presence. It's the rightness. So because it's taking away from my ability to be whatever else I want to be, engaged, related, thinking about. So I have a choice. I can spend my energy on right, or whatever else there is to do, right? With my creativity, my intellect, my presence, my whatever. And I didn't see that before. So it's like, oh, I have access to something else if I can let that go, right? I create a space for something else. So
Yeah,
thanks.
oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Rose. And Gio and I were having a conversation yesterday, and I was laughing about my being righteous and indignant when Susan said turn left, and she knew very well where she was going. And we were laughing about it. And that pointed us to another strategy to actually eliminate the suffering and abate the addiction. When you can catch it, laugh about it now. Laugh. It's like, oh my God, girl, it's 60 minutes ago, they're late. Laugh about it. Because guess what? If you really care about that relationship and you're really committed, Dean, to actually making a difference in the world of health and well-being, a week later, or even sooner, or 6 months later, you'll be laughing about that thing you were righteous and indignant about. So guess what? Might as well laugh at it right now and let it go.
Oh, Saurel, you're pointing to something really great, right? So when we're being righteous, like, we don't really want people to know that's how we're being, right?
Of
So
course not.
we
Not
be
walking around with the needle in your vein and showing people. No, you don't do that.
right. So in order to cover up how you're really being, we be another way. And what is that? What does that put in the space? Like there's an integrity issue there, right? There's an authenticity issue there that probably creates something. And we think people don't know, but you know how you feel like something's off and you're not sure what it is? It's probably that way that we're being when we don't want you to know what's really going on over here. Anyway, that's what you made me think of.
Oh God, I love that. I love that, Rose. It's like I'm not really there, because what's there is only the shadow of what could be there, because I'm pretending to be some other way to hide that I have righteous indignation towards you. And I am right now hostile toward you. and I cover it up.
It's perhaps towards you, or I'm just hostile. You know,
Mm,
I'm just being hostile. It
Yeah.
could be not towards you. I may not be necessarily
yeah.
responding to you, but I'm just being hostile. And I'm right about it, right?
Yeah.
Lori K says, to wrap this up, says, someone told me she was nosy. I was nosy. And I believed them, so I stopped asking questions. The suffering is I had distanced myself from people. People didn't think I was interested in who they are. And I would talk about myself too much because it was safer. It's a lot of suffering around being right about something, right? And I know, like, if Lori K looks at it, she's like, well, it's kind of hard to laugh at it. Like, this is a lot of suffering. But I could, we could laugh at it, like, oh my goodness, I got stuck with being right about something I made up about what that person meant when they said I was nosy. And I'm not trying to fix you, Lori K. The Daily Huddle holds no truth, but Albert Einstein said, I'm not a genius, I'm just curious, So nosy gives you access to being a genius. I'm just saying. And they didn't know that.
I gave that up, the not asking questions, but I do find that it's still difficult sometimes to come up with questions, and because I for so long had the habit of not asking questions, but I've embraced my curiosity.
That's awesome.
Since then, but
well, very good, Saurel. Thank you, Lori K, for sharing. Thank you for giving it up. Thank you for the example. Very generous. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Saurel, you want to have your last word and we go out dancing?
Yeah, why not? Be right and laugh about it. And give it up. Be right, laugh about it, give it up. Because guess what? It comes with the package.
Well, very good. Now you know what to do on the holidays, and don't forget to eat carefully, laugh. I forgot the 5 things. We'll pick it up tomorrow.
Oh yeah, from our good friend Patty Dabrowski.
love, laugh, eat, move,
less.
move, and stress less.
Here we go. We live with
That's
those.
right.
Thank you.